when it comes to mass shooters and the mass shootings, do, so if the mass shooter is a white supremacist, does it even fucking matter? And this is what America's slow civil war will look like. Now, this is the hate that hate produced. White supremacy and white racism in their many forms are inherently violent, anti-human, and fucking evil. Now, last Saturday, a 33-year-old man named Mauricio Garcia attacked a mall in Allen, Texas, killing at least 8 people and wounding 7 others. And children were among the victims. As is common to America's mass shootings, Garcia used an AR-15 assault-style rifle. He also wore body armor and carried a pistol and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. Means he was going all out. He was intending to kill more than what he already got. Other guns and ammunition were found in his vehicle outside. A police officer who happened to be at the mall for an unrelated matter was able to shoot and kill Garcia. Now, if the police officer had not been present, the death toll would have been much higher than expected. Now, social scientists and other experts have repeatedly shown that the number of guns in a community are directly correlated with the rate of gun violence and gun deaths. Now, Texas has some of the weakest gun laws in the United States. The lack of effective gun laws in Texas allowed the shooter to amass the arsenal that he used to commit an act of massive killing. Now, federal and other law enforcement are now focusing on how Garcia appeared to be a right-wing domestic terrorist who was motivated by neo-Nazism. Now, Rolling Stone reports the suspected mass shooter who killed at least 8 people at an Allen, Texas mall on Saturday frequently had posted pro-white supremacist and neo-Nazi materials on social media, according to an FBI bulletin that was revealed by Rolling Stone. Now, the FBI's review and triage of the subject's social media accounts revealed hundreds of different postings and images to include writings with racially or ethnically motivated violent extremist rhetoric. Included the neo-Nazi materials and materials espousing the supremacy of the white area, the bulletin read. The document also says that the alleged shooter was discharged from the military in 2008 due to mental health concerns. Now, Mauricio Garcia entered the regular army in June of 2008, but he was terminated 3 months later without completed initial entry training. He was not awarded a military occupational specialty. He had no deployment or any awards, and we do not provide characterization of discharge for any soldier, an Army spokesperson said in the statement. Now, investigators believe that the shooter was a neo-Nazi and an incel, according to an internal email circulated by Texas law enforcement. Now, this was added from a different channel. Garcia self-identified in some posts as an incel, a term that the Anti-Defamation League defines as heterosexual men who blame women and society for their lack of romantic success. Some posts were sexist and expressed anger towards women. Now, another post expressed anger toward family members who mocked any attempt that he made to be masculine, and told that he was disturbed. And yet another described people making jokes or awkward comments about the poster's likelihood of committing mass murder. Now, other photos posted on Garcia's account include various firearms, some of which the user wrote he acquired in recent months. And there are also photos of a body armor vest with a RWDS patch, an abbreviation for Right-Wing Death Squad, that authorities have said Garcia wore during the shooting. In an April 24th post from this year, Garcia had praised the shooter in the Nashville school massacre that killed 6 people, including 3 children the month before, referring to the number of people murdered. Other posts espoused anti-Semitism and echoed the replacement theory and the false notion that a conspiracy is underway to make the U.S. population less white. And some gunmen motivated by racism said that they were inspired by that theory, even though they had no proof whatsoever that theory is even taking place, because they have no proof of that. Now, the mainstream news media and other observers are trying to find granular details of direct and clear cause and effect between Garcia's alleged act of terrorism and killing and his white supremacist and neo-Nazi beliefs, when in fact the explanation and the reality are macro level and obvious. To that point, the New York Times uses language such as the motive for the attack remains unclear and features a headline that reads, "After Texas mall shooting, searching for the motive." There is no mystery. An avowed white supremacist and neo-Nazi who wears patches and insignia about being a member of a right-wing death squad went into a mall and shot at least 8 people to death. That was Garcia's decision to shoot and kill and maim other human beings is somehow peripheral to or coincidental to his hateful belief, and it strains all credulity and reason. Not sure if I said that right, but you know. Now, the Times' own reporting points to the obvious violent intent and motivations that are signaled too by wearing a right-wing death squad patch. Now, the phrase harkens back to General Augusto Pinochet's violent right-wing regime in Chile in the 1970s and 80s. The Pinochet government was notorious for assembling death squads that murdered the democratic enemies. Now, more recently, neo-Nazi groups in the United States and members of other far-right organizations like the Proud Pricks have claimed the phrase, and often they wear the abbreviation on clothing or patches. The Proud Pricks in particular often combine RWDS labels with shirts reading, but that Pinochet did nothing wrong when he did. The online profile being investigated also includes several pictures showing a dark tactical vest with an RWDS patch, and the patch has the shape of a shield with a notch in its upper right corner, and echo experts say of similar patches worn by Nazi SS units. Now, Eric Toller, who is a researcher for Bellingcat, also highlighted how Garcia's intent and motivations can be readily determined by his online presence, which included links to neo-Nazi and white supremacist sites, images of Nazi and other fascist tattoos, pictures of guns and ammunition, a manifesto, which a lot of people do, which a lot of the mass shooters somehow they somehow get a manifesto. Basically, he praised Hitler. Images purporting to explain why Latinos should become white supremacists in order to earn their full whiteness. Photos of Chilean strongman leader Pinochet, who deployed both death squads and other extrajudicial means during his reign of terror. And he repeated the use of white supremacist and misogynistic language. On Twitter, Toller summarizes this. Basically, he also posted his handwritten personal diary. Everything that we've seen shows that this is about the most textbook mass shooter you'll ever find, and he tells you about it every step of the way. He will be a reference point for decades on mass shooters because he shared so much with them. He literally posted multiple identification cards with his name and face, pictures of receipts with his name and city, and photos of the mall where he carried out his mass shooting a few weeks before he did it. He posted a manifesto suicide note online right before the shooting. The Allen shooter was obviously a white supremacist neo-Nazi. He was basically announcing that he was going to do a mass shooting for months beforehand, and he planned his target weeks in advance. Now, predictably, the conservatives, gun fetishes, and too many among the mainstream news media are somehow treating the massacre in Allen, Texas as though it's like the weather, something spontaneous and more or less outside of a human control. Now, in reality, right-wing terrorism, including mass shooting, is in fact the opposite. They basically are wholly predictable because they are the intended and designed outcome of a larger political and social climate that encourages such acts of violence through both stochastic terrorism as well as direct incitements and commands. And to this point, the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and other law enforcement have continued to warn that the right-wing domestic terrorists are the single greatest threat to this country's domestic safety. Now, the permission structure for the right-wing violence and terrorism begins at the top with the Republican Party and conservative movements leaders, spokespeople, news media, and other influentials. Now, at Media Matters, the Southern Poverty Law Center and other watchdog organizations and experts have extensively documented. Now, through a process known as narrative laundering, Foe and the larger right-wing echo chamber have mainstreamed what were once fringe white supremacist and neo-Nazi beliefs about the non-existent anti-white conspiracies such as the Great Replacement and demographic winter, where white people are being replaced by non-whites who are being secretly commanded and financed by elites and globalists, meaning Jewish people. Now, the right's Black Lives Matter and woke and LGBTQ people boogeyman moral panics are a key part of a strategy to encourage violence and the societal discord by scaring good white Christians and other real Americans that their children, families, and very lives, prosperity, and freedom are under siege by diversity and multiculturalism. Now, former Foe personality, the racist piece of shit Tucker, had mainstreamed white supremacist and racial authoritarian hatred and lies, and where on a near daily basis he radicalized the millions of white people who watched his racist White Power Hour show into believing even more in the necessity and virtues of right-wing violence, bigotry, and hatred. Now, Donald Trump and the MAGA movement rode such white supremacy and anti-black and anti-brown animus to the White House in 2016 as part of a plan to end multiracial pluralistic democracy. Now, Trump's regime further empowered and attempted to normalize overt white racism, the white supremacy, including fascist violence. Trump and his propagandists and initiators, such as Governor Ron DeSantis, are continuing with this strategy. Now, one of the defining hours of Trump's 2024 squatting campaign is a threat and promise to get revenge on his and his maggot movement's enemies in a Hitler-like final battle. Now, other Republican fascist leaders, such as Representative Paul Gosar and Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, have repeatedly shown themselves to be white supremacists who support right-wing political violence and terrorism. Now, it is now part of the Republican Party's branding for its elected officials and candidates to show themselves using guns such as the AR-15 to shoot down their enemies. And this is not fucking symbolic. Such images and actions are fucking threats of violence and the harm that will come to Democrats, the progressives, the black and brown people, and anyone else who dares to oppose the fucking Republican piece of shit fascist conservatives and their forces. Now, black flags, which signal no quarter or mercy, is to be given to one's enemy outside of homes, on vehicles, and as insignia and clothing are a common feature across red state America and Trumplandia. Now, the Republican fascists and the larger right-wing propaganda machine have been extremely effective. Now, for example, a majority of the Republicans believe that white people are oppressed and that they are being replaced by non-whites in America, which they have no proof of. Violence is a predictable response to perceived existential threats. Creating the false belief that one's group is under existential threat is one of the primary ways that malign actors incite genocidal and eliminationist violence as seen in Rwanda and Nazi Germany. Other polling and research show that a plurality, if not a majority, of Republicans and right-leaning independents that supported Trump's Klan attack on the Capitol believed that such events were justified when that was not justified at all, and that the Klan insurrectionists are patriots, which they're not, or that they're otherwise not guilty of a serious crime. That was a serious crime, and they are guilty. Now, political scientists at the University of Chicago have shown that there are likely millions of Republicans and Trumpists who support them, and they will participate in the second Civil War, other armed insurrection to remove Joe Biden and the Democrats from office, and by doing so, ending multiracial democracy in America. That's their plan all along. Unfortunately, because of bad habits, laziness, obsolete institutional and cultural norms, wish-casting, denial, or some other maladaptive behavior, America's political class and news media insist on describing the Republican fascists and the larger right's attempts to end multiracial pluralistic America as being some type of culture war. As it was seen in Allen, Texas, and many other examples of the right-wing political violence and terrorism and thuggery across the country, this is no culture war. It is nothing more than a fascist war against democracy and a humane and normal society. The language of a culture war may make Democrats and progressives and other Americans feel like they are superior and safe from the denizens and rubes and other backward folks of Trumplandia and the red state America who are tricked into false consciousness about the primacy of their guns, God, and the flag. There is no God for one. They support a Confederate flag, which shows racism, and they believe in their mind that the Democrats are coming to take their guns, which is not the case. And now the cult-like love of Trump and the MAGA movement, but such smugness and false sense of superiority and accompanying mocking laughter offers no safety, insight, or correct analysis and conclusions about how to counter and to defeat the Republican fascists and their forces. But as it was seen in Allen, Texas on Saturday, America is actually in a slow civil war. Now, in a recent conversation here at Salon, journalist and author Jeff Charlotte offered his intervention and warning. Now, I think that we understand. I think what we understand is that these neo-fascists are not going to stop, and they're not going to go away anytime soon either. And because why would they stop? The pleasure is in transgression. The pleasure is in going further. There is no ideological position to which they are loyal. There is no policy to which they are loyal. They're going to keep going. There is no movement per se, but transgression. And as soon as something becomes normal, they'll go further. The folks who imagine Handmaid's Tale as the end zone, no. Whatever it is, you have to go further. Now, this is the good news, too, because a movement of ultimate transgression is going to burn out. As a society and country, America is going to experience and have to go through fascism. And we're not in it now. There's a fascist movement now, but it drives me fucking crazy. And people say, well, it's not like the Hitler regime. No, it's fucking not, but that was a regime. And we don't have a fascist regime. We could with the fascist movement. It's worse post-Trump than it was during Trump's squatting. Now, just as January 6th was a trial run, and that Donald Trump is just a prototype, there will be many more acts of white supremacist terrorism and violence as we've seen or saw on the news in Allen, Texas. and there will be much more bloodshed. America's slow civil war continues, and it may likely soon speed up and explode with Donald Trump's second run for squatting in the whales. And to this fucking point, they've been largely undeterred and in no way stopped, and you have been warned. You have been fucking warned again. Now, if you like the video, you can give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King. You can also hit the notification bell so that you're notified when a new video comes out. You can also leave a comment, let me know what you think. And if you want to support my work even further, you can donate to my Patreon link, which you can find in the About section of YouTube. And for as little as a few bucks a month or video, your donation can help go a long way, and thanks for listening.